Good morning, David Akubian. It's a beautiful day up here in the mountains. The fall colors are just tremendous. And I wanted to take a second to show you some of the techniques that I use when I'm photographing fall colors. Just those typical fall color shots are great. There's nothing wrong with them. I love them, enjoy doing them, but sometimes I want to capture a little more creative image. And I revert back to my days from high school and in college when I did some painting, and I think of the impressionistic painters. And I'm going to do with it what's known as ICM, or intentional camera movement. You either love intentional camera movement or you hate it. I love it. My teaching partner Cecil Holmes absolutely hates it. He gets bored with it. I love it, so I enjoy doing it with fall colors when I have nice color and I have some nice distinct vertical lines in the image, which are typically trees. So what I'm going to do is I want to talk about the three techniques that I use. Just the simple straight shot, the straight image. Today I'm using the Tamron 35-150. It's a great landscape lens. It's a great portrait lens. For what I'm doing here, it's phenomenal. I've got the Nikon Z6. I chose the Z6 from Nikon for the multiple exposure portion of the ICM lesson, and you'll see why, because it's the only camera that I'm aware of, or that I own, that allows me to do multiple exposures and average out the exposure. So that's why I'm going to use it. So the first one, what I do is just simply line up a nice composition. I'm at ISO 100, 1/25th of a second at f4. I've got my focus preset here on this tree in the foreground. I'm going to turn it off and I'm going to recompose. And what I'm trying to do is put vertical elements, two trees in this particular case with some moss and stuff growing on them, on the sides of the frame, some nice color and some darker lines in there, so when I get the movement here shortly, it'll show as well. So just simply do one single image. Looks great. Now let's move on to our first creative technique. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take simply a reciprocal value of that 1/25th of a second at f4 at 100 ISO. So I'm going to take my f-stop to f16, and I'm going to reduce my shutter speed to 1 second, which is going to give me the right exposure. Then I'm going to loosen the tension on my ball head. I'm using the Acratech GXP Ballhead, and I'll loosen the tension on the front. I want to see how it does. I want to loosen the tension on the back just a little bit because I want that nice smooth movement. And with the 1 second exposure, I'm going to frame up my exposure. Let me get in here for a second. Let's see. All right. So I frame it up, and on the 1 second exposure, I'm going to simply just press the shutter release and then move my camera just ever so slightly up and down. It doesn't need to go but about 1/4 of an inch on the way up and on the way down. Do a couple of these. Looks good. One more. Then one more with a little bit more movement. That looks really good. I like that one a lot. So now, I've done the single exposure and I've done the slow exposure with the camera movement. Now I want to talk about doing multiple exposures, and I'm going to move the camera behind this so you can see the screen to set up the image as well. So the settings that I was using for the original image were 1/25th of a second. So let's go ahead and get back to 1/25th of a second at f4. You can see that original image that I had that I did the movement. So now what I want to do is I want to set the camera up to do multiple exposures. And again, the reason I like the Nikon is when you go into the menu setting and you find multiple exposure, you see that it gives you some options. Number of shots, I'm going to do 9 images. The image overlay, I want average. What that simply does is it averages out the exposure, so I don't have to calculate it out. It's just one step that saves me a little bit of time. So I average the exposure out. The other way to do it would be lighten, darken, everything else, but I'm not going to worry about that. I just want average. I'm going to keep all the exposures. No, I'm turning that off because there's no reason for me to keep all those exposures. I just want the one that's averaged out. Overlay shooting, yes, it just gives me an idea of where I'm going to be. So then the last step that I do is simply turn it on. Make sure that you push it for OK. And you notice it also said on series. That means it's going to stay on until I turn it off, but I'm just going to do the 1 series and that's it. So now I'm going to move the camera back to the side so you can see the movement in the camera that I do between frames. This is going to give it an impressionistic look, but almost stippled brushing and everything else. So let's move this camera. All right, now we've got the camera back to the side. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 9 frames with just a slight movement between frames to give you that impressionistic look, but with distinct edges, almost like dabbing the brush in a painting. So I'm going to loosen it up, do my first exposure, then you'll see that all that I'm going to do is just move it down just a slight amount. It gives me my overlay view. I can see how much I've done. And I'm just simply moving it up and down 1/4 of an inch each time. And you should always count your images because I haven't counted and I don't know where my images were. Okay, actually that would have been the 10th, so that did it. So now what I'm going to do, I'll take these into the computer and I'll just make some fine tuning on the exposure, color saturation, everything else. I'll put these images between the segments of the video that I did, and I'll put them in at the end as well. But what I'm trying to do is just simply to encourage you to get out, not only shoot fall colors, but work on your creativity a little bit as well. Try different things, go out and see what you can do. It's a way to open your eyes to different opportunities when it's just a typical scene, especially with a lot of vertical lines and everything, just to give you a different look on something. So it never hurts. You're not wasting anything but a little bit of time if you don't like it. It's not going to hurt you, just reformat your memory card. So thank you again. If you like this video at the end, please give it a thumbs up. And as always, if you don't subscribe to my videos, please subscribe to the video. And over here in the corner, you can see there's a little bell. If you ring that bell, it'll give you notifications every time I post a new video. So again, thank you for joining me this morning in Bear Woods, and have a great day and have a great fall.